For most of the space age, the most expensive part of a rocket was used once, then thrown into the ocean. On December 21st, 2015, SpaceX refused to throw one away. A Falcon 9 first stage carried 11 satellites toward orbit, let go of its upper stage, turned around in the dark, and flew back down to the Florida coast. 15 stories of hardware, engine lit, legs spreading open, settling upright onto a circle of concrete. Elon Musk had spent years arguing that reusing rockets was the only way to make spaceflight cheap, and almost no one in the industry believed him. So what actually changes on the night the most expensive part of a rocket stops being disposable? Start with the problem, because it was never really about the rocket. It was about the bill. Musk liked to explain it without any engineering at all. Imagine if you had to buy a new plane for every flight. Very few people would fly. Rockets had worked that way for decades. You build an extraordinary machine, use it once, and let it fall away, and nobody questioned it, because nothing else worked. Bringing a booster home is brutally hard. It separates high above the planet, moving fast, and physics, fuel, and timing all fight the idea of setting it down gently. SpaceX did not solve that in one jump. It built a test vehicle called Grasshopper, a single stage that could lift off and lower itself straight back down. On December 17, 2012, it rose about 40 meters and landed. 6 months later, it climbed past 325 meters, more than 1,000 feet, and returned to its pad in Texas. Small hops, but each one proved the control was real. The rocket itself was being redesigned to come home. 4 grid fins to steer it through the air. 4 legs to stand on. 9 engines clustered at the base. And in the background sat a customer that made the whole gamble survivable. NASA, after the shuttle era, wanted reliable access to orbit without paying to build every piece itself. Its commercial contracts handed SpaceX money, milestones, and credibility. The institution funding the future was about to be outrun by it. The landing was never one person's work. It was a system, and a few people set its terms. Musk was the pressure. He was not the engineer who solved the descent. His job was to make full reusability the goal instead of a side experiment, and to refuse to let anyone treat it as optional. Lars Blackmore was the landing brain. As principal rocket landing engineer, he led the work that brought a booster down precisely and on its own, drawn from research into pinpoint landings on other planets. The goal was 3 plain words that hid years of difficulty: land, refuel, refly. And Gwynne Shotwell was the one who had to make it matter commercially. As president, she ran operations and the relationships with the people buying launches, and by then had built the Falcon order book past 100 launches and more than $10 billion. A reused booster is worthless until a customer trusts it with their payload. By late 2015, SpaceX had already tried to land boosters on platforms floating at sea. Every attempt had failed. The failures were expensive and public, and they were also the only way the company was learning. Then came the night of December 21st. A Falcon 9 lifted off carrying 11 Orbcomm satellites. That part was routine. The satellites separated and went on to orbit exactly as planned. The other half of the mission was the part no one had done on a real commercial flight. As the upper stage climbed away, the first stage flipped, burned back toward the coast, dropped its legs, and set down on landing zone 1. Roughly 10 minutes after leaving the ground, it was standing on the concrete in one piece. "Welcome back, baby," Musk said. Weeks earlier, Blue Origin had landed its New Shepard booster after a suborbital hop. This was different. This booster had done orbital-class work and come home intact. "It's a revolutionary moment," Musk said. No one had ever brought an orbital-class booster back intact. The thing the industry had called impossible was sitting on a pad in Florida where anyone could look at it. That first booster never flew again. SpaceX pulled it apart to study it instead, then set it upright outside company headquarters in California, a monument to proof over profit. The next one would have to fly twice, but getting a booster back only proved you could catch it. It did not prove the booster was still worth anything. That proof came on March 30th, 2017. A Falcon 9 launched a satellite called SES-10 on a first stage that had already flown, then landed it again, this time on a drone ship at sea. The first landing changed what people believed was possible. This changed what customers were willing to pay for. The drone ships were not a fallback. Many missions burned too much fuel climbing to make it all the way back to land. So catching a booster at sea is what makes recovery realistic at all. Musk named that drone ship, "Of Course I Still Love You," after a sentient starship from a science fiction novel by Ian M. Banks. A sister ship on the other coast carries an equally strange name. Just read the instructions. Then SpaceX did the unglamorous thing. It made reuse boring. In the spring of 2018, it introduced a version of the Falcon 9 called Block 5, built for reliability, longer life, and fast turnaround. Reuse stopped being a milestone and became the routine. The number stopped sounding believable. By early 2025, Falcon boosters had flown again more than 384 times. Fairings had been reused across 307 missions, both without a failure on SpaceX's ledger, and the Falcon family had passed 430 launches. In 2025 alone, SpaceX flew 165 orbital missions, around 85% of every orbital launch in the United States that year. A launch almost every other day. Cadence itself had become the advantage. Here is the part that turns the story back on itself. The institution that ended up looking slow is the one that helped build the company that passed it. NASA's commercial programs paid for the early demonstrations and later backed crewed flights with fixed-price deals, including a $2.6 billion award to carry astronauts. NASA changed its own model, and that change helped create the company that exposed how expensive the old way had become. So this was never a story about one genius and one flawless landing. The booster came home because the company kept flying, failing, inspecting, and trying again, until failure turned into data, and data turned into a rocket that returned. The speed of a thing is usually set by the system around it. Change the system, and the impossible slowly turns ordinary. There is a next chapter now, a fully reusable system called Starship, still unproven at the level Falcon 9 has reached, but it stands on the assumption that cracked on a concrete pad in December 2015. The most expensive part of the rocket had stopped being disposable. And once that was true, there was no putting it back. We remember the launches. The thing that actually rewrote the industry was the part that came back down. If you found this story fascinating, like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell. Thanks for watching AMPVEX. We'll see you in the next one.